Hello and welcome everyone to Fall In. We are sure happy to be here tonight as we have some more campfire stories, kind of a part two here for Alfonso Nixon, or Big Al, or even First Sergeant. I know we've already gotten into that before with Tammy in one of our previous episodes, but glad to have you back. I know. Can't wait to talk some more about your service career and some of the things that mean a lot to you, Big Al.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say First Sergeant and Big Al, and I've been a lot of things to a lot of people. So yeah, I'll answer about anything to include either some uncommon names.
Do you mean like people that maybe didn't like you quite as much? Because I mean, it seemed like
Yeah,
people liked you quite a bit out there.
uh,
Because I mean, hearing the stories from Chad and Daryl.
but that's just Chad and Daryl. I mean, for every two, there's another 500 that probably will tell a different story. So anyway, I'm not lost. That's not lost on me. I understand it. Although I've made a lot of impacts to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So I can embrace that role.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like you were a big part in a lot of those. Your Joes, I guess you could say, lives. Tell us some stories about maybe how you and maybe not get specific on who, but like you can kind of tell some stories about you having to deal with kind of being kind of in charge and things like that, and having to kind of lead these guys. I mean, because not just being in charge is not all of it, and of course, I mean that's kind of a power trip kind of way to say it, but like you actually led these guys. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about being an example, right?
Yeah, and I used to tell my guys all the time that it's called leadership, not drafting. Drafting, while effective in cup racing, doesn't do any good when it comes to leadership, because leadership, you actually have to be out front, and sometimes that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and then sometimes circumstances cause people to step up and be leaders even when they didn't expect to. Uh, but it's not about the stories, because there's for every incident there's 100 stories. But I could just simply say that I'll learn more about leadership from bad leaders than I did from good leaders.
Well, you kind of learned what not to do in a way.
Absolutely, or what not doing something could lead to, because sometimes the inability or the inactivity of leadership is what causes the greatest hurt. If soldiers have needs and they're not being taken care of, sometimes that I mean that's a pretty big deal. You just gotta. It's just like your animals, man. And I hate to equate it that way, but if you look at a dog uh, on the street that's being taken care of, that's America. In America, we hold our animals in higher regard than we do humanity in a lot of instances. But in other countries, it's not like that. So if you see people with healthy animals that are taken care of, then you know that you're in America. Even other countries' military, they don't they treat their soldiers worse than dogs. So I wasn't using that as a negative connotation. I was just using it, just to say that, look, you have to take care of everybody, everything, from the all the way down from the jack in the motor pool to the jack that's in the helicopter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we've had some comments, of civilian kind of people that have literally no clue a lot of times what we're talking about. Could you maybe be a little more specific?
What I'm saying is, so we were in Iraq and we had John Deere Gators, and everybody knows John Deere and everybody understands what a John Deere Gator is. They come in two different
It's like
versions.
a side by side.
Yes, side by side UTV, very low profile, but we had a series of these. That's what we used in and around the flight line. But we're in Iraq, and the commander says that it is easier at this juncture to replace a crew chief than it is to replace a John Deere Gator. And
And now, a
and when
crew chief, just to kind of specify on that, that's actually a door gunner, essentially, right?
Well, they're a lot more than just door gunners. I mean, these guys, they perform a myriad of inspections as well as in-flight actions and activities. And I don't ever want to put down anybody's job or what they do. I don't want to make it demeaning. So I'm just going to say, uh, I was just quoting him. At this juncture, it's easier to replace a crew chief than it is to replace that John Deere Gator.
So like
So,
a physical object, like an actual tool out there, is it's easier to replace the actual
well,
person than it is the actual vehicle.
and when we're in the military, we have to look at everything as an asset. And that's another reason why we're doing this podcast, because as people separate, or the higher up you go, you understand how impersonal it is. Because then it's about assets. It's
You're
about
just like a
managing
number.
assets. Absolutely. And we don't expect that when we go into the military. We want everybody to love us like our mother does. That's just what every being wants. You want a warm hug and a kind heart. But in the military, when it gets down to brass tacks, you're an asset. You're a number. I had a commander tell me that my life was a calculated loss, and he could perform his mission without it. And I'm like, whoa, what?
Yeah,
And
that's
he said,
pretty. That's pretty damn messed up. I'll tell you that.
well, that's when it really. I mean, that's when it really kind of hit me that I was just a number. I mean, I had a commander telling me that I was a calculated loss. Um,
I don't think you're a calculated loss, Big Al. I mean, the personality you bring to the table, you can't lose, Big Al. I mean, this world's better for having you in this world.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate that. I'm just kind of letting you know that that was a conversation that occurred,
I bet
and
that was kind of shocking though to hear something like that.
yeah, it really was.
What
And
rank was this guy? I mean, you don't have to get specific, but like he was higher up, and just kind of the way he looked on it, it was like you really are just a number. But when you're lower down in the ranks, it gets a little more personal. You think?
yeah, absolutely. And I remember, because I'm just going to transition from that question. People are going to love how I do this, but uh, even as a first sergeant, I would the only thing I could advise the commander is you don't need to know these guys. You don't need to know their names. You don't need to know how many kids they got. You don't need to know, you know, what his financial status is. You just need to know how many you have available to accomplish the mission. Because if it gets down from a commander's perspective, where you're deciding someone's fate or who goes on this mission based on, you know, well, that guy's got two kids and that guy's got, no kids, then you already lost the point of what you're there to do.
And that's not really fair in a lot of ways either. Just considering, I mean, if a person doesn't have kids, whether they do or not, I mean, I get that. Yeah, that will affect more lives, but like in a lot of ways, it's still kind of not fair. Like, oh, the single guy just gets sent out there because no one's gonna miss him. That's sad, really.
Yeah, and that's not the way we do business. That's leadership. I remember. Well, I won't remember. Let's just have a conversation. But as it comes up, just like now, we're coming up to the time of year where it's the holidays, and you got single soldiers that are living in the barracks. I can only speak to the time that I was in, but I know they're still there now today. And these guys, I was one of these guys. Well, the single soldiers aren't going on leave. They're going to be in the barracks over the holidays. And then you'll have some folks, and I'm just going to say, you have some folks that'll say, well, hey, look, let that single guy pull that duty on Thanksgiving Day so that married guy can be home with his family. You see what I'm saying? Because the single soldier, he ain't gonna be doing nothing but hanging out in the barracks anyway. And it's for the people in this that listen to this podcast that aren't in the military. I want them to understand, that's just an easy way to form a thought, but that's just not what we do in the military.
Imagine that though on the holidays. I bet it's even more dangerous though. Just considering those guys are at home and the single guy's still there, and if, a lot of times I'm sure that they feel like, oh, the military's going to be weak on the holidays. That might be an opportune time to attack.
And I've been attacked over the holidays. Man, it's just as we start to get into these topics on this podcast, you thrown me a couple of balls there. They were really softballs, but then it sends me back to the whole purpose of this thing, and the whole purpose of this whole podcast is to talk about uncomfortable issues, is to talk about the issues that are actually making headlines or not making headlines. You know what I mean? But I don't mind being uncomfortable. So one of the things that we're talking about in this is the holidays. And the holidays are hard on Joe's because when you leave home, everybody has in their own mind, everybody has their family traditions or whatever. And I remember I was my first embarkations were during the Christmas holidays because that's just the way it kind of lined up. And so thinking about it through my 20-year career, how many Christmases I spent at home versus away versus holidays with duty and otherwise, man. And yeah, it definitely makes a difference because people put so much stock on those events.
Yeah, I mean, especially when even the Joes that have kids. I know we were kind of sympathizing with the Joes that don't, but I mean the Joes that do have kids, if they don't get to spend time, and miss those precious memories. I mean, imagine how hard that's got to be to grow up, for that child even to grow up to that, dad's not always there, or even mom's not always there.
All right, so you gonna pull the first argument out of me, and this is what I tell my guys: make the time that you have count. Don't sit back. I mean, look, I guarantee you that no matter where you're at today, you're probably not going to be there tomorrow. And I don't care if you're in the military, if you're retired, or if you're a civilian. So you have to make today count. Carpe diem, seize the day. Because when you're gone, I mean, you're gone. Whether that's dead or deployed, you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
kills me that so many of these guys had so much time at home, but they were just wasting that time. Does that make sense? They're at home, but their kids are in the other room, or the wife's over there. They're at home, but they're not involved. They're not engaged.
Well,
And
truly,
that,
they're
and that
not home though. I mean, we've talked about that and kind of covered it in other episodes to where even if you're out in you're out in deployment or you're back home, you're still in deployment technically, kind of in your mind. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of guys, they're out there or they're at home, but they're thinking, hey, my guys, my brothers are over there fighting, and I'm at home, and I'm not there to help them. You know what I mean? We've kind of talked about that before.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
there is that.
imagine how that takes you away from your family a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole different podcast. But yeah, you're right. I was just speaking on the physical presence of the body, meaning
Yeah.
that I can guarantee you that if you were, because remember, I spent all of my time in the military outside of the time that I spent in school. I spent in a combat unit, combat uh, deployable units, meaning the divisions. I was in the 101st and the 160th uh, the majority of my career. That's where so fighting units. So I'm just speaking in the realm that when
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to go to the kids' game, go to the kids' game because next week you might not have that opportunity. And
Yeah.
to try to correlate that to what the civilians that are listening to this podcast understand is no one's promised tomorrow. So you got to make the day count. I mean, you have to be engaged. You can't, it's more than being present. You have to be engaged,
No,
and that's
definitely
kind of
100%.
and that's a perfect segue into fall in. That's why we're doing this. I mean, because for all of those guys who have served, this is the way of saying, "Hey, fall in, man," because the formation that we need you to kind of to become a part of now is what's going on in your area. I mean, whether that be making your presence seen at schools, whether that means going down to your local VFW. I mean, there's so many areas right now where our leadership is needed in the community. We served one time before, but now it's time for us to serve again. So that's the reason why we're doing this fall in thing. And with that, each one is going to help one. So that way, if we got 10 people that already have got their disability stuff done, then the goal will be to get each one of those 10 to bring 10 more. Does that make sense? We got to engage our veterans
Yeah,
now.
grassroots in a lot of ways too. I mean, because like you know, to where
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, we've got to get involved because there's so many issues that affect veterans and veterans' lives that if the veterans aren't going to be the ones that are going out there talking about it, then they're just going to be talked about. And if you're being talked about, that means you're not a part of the conversation. So we need to get veterans involved in the conversation, and we need to be the ones that are actually managing our own talking points, if you will. So that's why Fall In is so near and dear to me, and it's taken us a long time to get to this point. But I think if people can stick around here, they're gonna not only be entertained, but they're gonna be informed. Just it's gonna be a little bit before you get to see Big Al act a fool, but because I'm just
we
trying to.
already see that anyway. That's all right. Just tune into any broadcast on iRacing.
But
I'm
yeah,
just
I
joking
mean,
around.
I know you can joke around as much as you want to because you understand that I know where you live.
Oh, um, but kind of on another note, I mean, I know you said you want to get all these veterans involved and things like that. I think that also you need to mobilize the civilian population. A lot of them just do not know what really is going on, and the things we talk about here are just so eye opening.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we've got the website that we're developing. We're gonna have the Facebook page, we're gonna have the YouTube channel, and it's gonna also be a way where it's gonna be an interactive dialogue where civilians can actually send us questions, and you and I primarily will be sitting there, and we'll talk about these issues, and we want people to engage and throw us some hard balls. Give us some things that you would like to talk about, or you would like us to talk about. So as this goes forward, and we're gonna be bringing in different veterans that we're gonna talk to from both the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and even the Coast Guard. So if you know any of those people that are out there that have anything going on, charitable or otherwise, that they would like to get them on the podcast, we'd love to sit down with them around the campfire and have a good conversation because this, like I said, it's got to be entertaining as well as informative, Brian.
For sure. But back to you. I mean, we still have a lot of time. We can still talk about. I mean, the floor is open, man. I mean, tell us some stories that you think are entertaining or just have some type of emotional development for yourself while you were in the military.
You're gonna have to ask me a little bit more specific than that.
I mean, I did
Ask me.
ask him
Ask,
specific
yeah,
questions earlier.
yeah.
I said, hey, what
Okay.
kind of things
But
did you have to deal with leading other, soldiers, trying to lead them, like anything that like just that comes to mind, that you affected a soldier's life by being a role model, a leader for him or her.
all right, so I got a story. I was a combat skills instructor in 160th, and this was circa 97, 98, and we had this kid that he hadn't showed up to work. For lack of a better term, he was AWOL.
Oh wow!
He,
So he literally, yeah, he was, ran away.
yeah, but I knew he hadn't gone far. But yet he wasn't coming to work, and this was during the holidays. And so the kid, he finally comes in, and we're asking him the tough questions like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so he gets down to the point, and he says that um, he is on his way to work every day, but he doesn't have insurance, and so he can't get in the gate. So he turns around and he goes home, and then it starts to dawn on him just that Christmas is coming, and he doesn't have anything for his kids even for Christmas because he doesn't even have money to drive in. And so of course, after a period of peeling back the onion, if you will, we get this story from this guy, and I'm like, okay, no, I know what happened. I remember what happened. We hadn't heard from him, so I was home, and we figured out where he lived, and it went by, couldn't see him, couldn't find anybody, but the neighbor, said, "Hey, look, if you see this guy, give me a call." Well, the neighbor gives me a call because this was in the early '90s, and so I can't get in contact with anybody that any of my fellow cadre. But my neighbor, who's an E5, he gets in the truck with me, and we roll over to this kid's house. And I remember we went in there, and I got him at home, and that's when he broke down and told me the story about not having money for his kids and for Christmas, and spending the money in the gas and not feeling like he was getting any help. And I remember me and Avery Honeycutt, that was his name, Sergeant Honeycutt, who wasn't even in the same unit as I. It touched him so much that he went and got gifts from, he bought gifts himself, and him and his wife put together to try to get this kid a decent Christmas, because the holidays were going on. I took it back to work. We all Everyone, it's the holidays, man. And you work in the military, you're not millionaires, man. At this point, I was an E5, so it was everything that I could do to make sure that my own kids having a Christmas. And I
Yeah.
remember, and I remember, little AJ was he's between 4 and 5, and I explained to him that,
That's
hey,
when Christmas is an important time. That's for sure.
and I remember I explained it to him like, hey, some kids not gonna have Christmas. Maybe you think you could, share some of your gifts, and he was like, pick the gifts he hadn't even seen, and we made it so that this kid could have a Christmas. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
We delivered Christmas to this kid, not just in the form of gifts, but we got gifts for him, we got gifts for his wife, and we got gifts for his kids, and we got them food. We took care of them so they wouldn't have to worry about anything for the holidays.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that is such a inspirational story. I mean, I bet he, had a lot of pep in his step when he came back to, started working and stuff like that. I mean, man, didn't have insurance on his car, and that's crazy. I mean, I thought, I mean, I know the army, don't they provide like lodgings and things like that? I mean, there had to be something to the story more than that, because I mean, what was all the money going to?
His
'Cause, I mean, I know
bill,
it's not. I know you're not like rich or anything like that. Working in the army, so they didn't provide him with like
yeah, you
lodging.
gotta, yeah, just like your mother provides you with lodging now. You get you enter into an agreement with your landlord for X amount of money that you pay a month. The
Well, yeah,
military,
I mean that's normal, but I'm just saying that
yeah,
usually
that
when
is
you think
what
about it,
happened.
like you said, a single or even a Joe with a family. I mean, you always hear as a civilian that like there's housing for military personnel. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. He absolutely could have got his name on the list and qualified for on post housing, but he was just getting to the base, and that is probably one of the times where
talking
it's the
about I
most.
live with my mom. I don't live with my mom.
I know. Well, okay, of course you don't. But you know how this kid repaid us?
How's that? I mean, that is such a great story.
Yeah, he didn't show up on the
Oh
second.
my goodness.
True
You had to
story.
be
Couldn't
some
make
kind
it
of
up.
damn mad. I bet. I bet both you and that other guy that helped.
You know what? That was early on in my career, so I would say at that point I was very impressionable, and at that point I might have been disappointed. But as the years go by, you see stuff like that, it becomes, I mean,
I mean, y'all
so
made that
common.
kid's Christmas. Christmas.
Yeah, and that's just it, man. You spend your whole life giving, and not everybody that serves the military is honorable. I'll just say that, it is what it is.
See, I just feel like there must have been something else to the story, in a lot of ways too. But I mean, hey, you guys did the right thing. You had his back, and that's what matters. You know what I mean? You guys did, even if you didn't get anything for it, you still, you did it out of the goodness of your heart. So I mean, a lot of people think the military probably takes that heart out of you, but it doesn't sound like it.
No, above and beyond. I mean, we did for that guy, and that's how he repaid us. And I remember telling him that when we finally did get him, because we sent him home. Uh, you know, we're gonna do the paperwork at that point, guy. We went way above and beyond what was expected, and then that's just how you even. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, definitely not a story with as much of a happy ending, but still a happy ending for the kid. I think. I think that's the biggest win that you guys should feel proud of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I spent all of my time at Fort Campbell except for, the first 10 months I was at drum. I was a kid. I didn't know anything then. And then I went to Germany for 2 years. And after that, I came to Campbell and, I was in the 160th Spec Ops. And it was, man, it was an awesome time. It was a different time. Can't tell many stories about that place, but,
Well, I'm sure the Germans, though. I mean, I've heard many good stories, from the military. The few military people I know that they spent time in Germany. They seem like they love Americans over there.
I can't speak on behalf of the Germans.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess I am generalizing in a lot of ways, but I have heard that before. I'm just saying, Uh, but I know before we kind of got this thing started here tonight, you were mentioning that you had all kinds of achievements, like a bronze star. Like, can you walk us through like how you earn those things?
Yeah, off the backs of my soldiers. I mean, that's the quick, fast, and short way to say it.
Well,
I
we're
just
not looking for the quick, fast, and short way to say
well,
it.
no, I mean, I had the pleasure and privilege of serving our country in a lot of different capacities through several conflicts, and by the grace of God, I never lost a soldier or anybody that I was responsible for in any of those conflicts, and I served honorably, and so therefore I was rewarded accordingly. A lot of
Well,
it,
now I
it.
know last time in part one we talked about it. You said you had lost 8 guys. They weren't under your command.
Oh no, as a matter of no, God no, man. There was those none of those guys that perished were in my command. They were all in my. We're all in the same company. Um,
So they're just guys you knew that
we
you
lost.
spent
We
a lot of
lost.
time with.
Yeah, we lost an aircraft. We had three aircraft
Oh man,
in the Philippines, and one of those aircraft ultimately ended up crashing.
how
And
did
this
it
was,
crash? I mean, the Philippines. I mean, that is that an active war zone type of area?
see, man, there you go, asking questions again.
Well, that's what I'm
Uh,
here for, ain't it? I'm trying to
no,
learn.
we were involved in a mission to rescue. I was in the 160th at the time, and we were in E Company 160th, and we had formed up at Campbell and made our way to Korea, and then we found ourselves in the Philippines, aiding in assisting the rescuing of a American missionary couple
Okay.
that had been captured by the Abu Sayyaf, who had ties to Al Qaeda, and so this was during OEF. This was right after 9/11, and we entered into the Philippines, kind of under the cover of darkness, but
What
hidden.
vehicles were y'all using?
We were using the MH-47 Echo, using
Can you
spec
describe
ops.
that? Yeah, what kind of what is that?
It's a Chinook. That's a special
Okay.
variant of the Chinook. It's a helicopter.
Wow, that's a two rotor, or the big one.
Yes, all the tandem. Yeah, that's right, baby. Heavy lift.
Yeah, that's those
Uh,
things are crazy. I mean,
yeah, so we kind of got the call to haul about everything that you could imagine, from Dr. Peppers to mail to people, and as a result of that, one of our runs to and from the island, because the Philippines is full of islands. One of our aircraft subsequently, it ended up crashing, and it killed all 10 on board, 8 of which were members of the 160th, and 2 of which were members of the Air Force. They were PJs.
oh dang. So they crashed. Like, could you give us any information on how they crashed? Like, was it because of fire? Like, actual, small arms fire. What caused them to crash?
Well, about as much as I want to get into it, it was just the aircraft became spatially disoriented in poor loom, low visibility, and
Oh, probably
they
bad
ended up,
fog or something.
yeah, smoke on the water, right?
I'll tell you what. I mean, I hate to derail a little bit, but me and you on our off time, a lot of times we do a lot of flight simulator stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, it does get pretty hard to fly in some fog.
Yeah, but the cool part about that is you can respawn, and that's
Yeah,
one of
you
the
can't
reasons.
do that for those guys that lost their lives. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's the reason. Watch this transition. That's the reason why I am so big on simulations for veterans because it can get them in a virtual environment, and that way they don't have to worry about the anxiety of being around a crowd of people. It can be controlled, and it's a great way to actually help with things like PTSD.
See, I'm wondering, because I remember I kind of threw you a hard ball last time whenever we were talking about, shooters and stuff for PTSD. But like, if maybe you were in a situation where you had flown an aircraft or something like that and had a really close call, or or being under fire, could that trigger something? Being in a flight simulator environment.
I don't know, man. It just depends. Everyone's situation is different, and that's it. That's the thing about
Yeah.
PTSD that people have to understand that no two people are gonna view the same situation the same. You know what I mean? They're gonna have direct different reactions to it, and that's why PTSD is such a beast to cope with. But we just want people to know, especially our veterans that are out there, you're not the only one that's dealing with it, and that's why I appreciate you asking me the tough questions, man. And I even strayed away from them a lot tonight, but as we roll on through this journey together, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is going to come to light. I just don't, it might not be time yet, but trying to keep this entertaining and informative.
Well,
Right.
it's not informative if you don't give me the facts. I understand you're afraid to talk about some of these things. I get it. I definitely get it.
I mean,
And
but
I
what do
hope
you what are you wanting that I'm not giving you? I guess would be the
No, I
direct
mean
question.
you've definitely given me a lot. I'm just saying that I know that you do sound reserved, like you're not wanting to go into things a little bit deeper. And you of course I don't want you to of course give us names or anything like that. But
Well,
I mean you just talk about maybe. Hey, if you don't want to, it's completely fine. But like talk about one of the times you actually maybe were under fire or something like that. The time you were really scared.
uh, nope, never came under fire, indirect fire. But I laugh
Yeah.
about that because you said, "Tell me about one of the times that you were scared." And the reason why that's funny is because, like, what is fear? You know what I mean?
I mean, even maybe not even fear for your own safety, but fear for others. I'm sure you dealt with that. I mean, considering you had to probably get the call that hey, this aircraft didn't make it. All these guys, they're gone.
Oh man, and and the reason why I don't want to talk when you say stuff like that is, and I want our listeners to understand, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the family members of the deceased, because every story that I could tell you about that, there are still survivors out there that are trying to do just that. And maybe if they were telling their version of the story, I'd feel a little better about it. But until I've heard their version of the story, I don't I guess I'm kind of tripped up about telling mine. Um Not like 9/11 of 7. Um I'm coaching my son's football team. He's in 8th grade at the time. We're in between deployments. Uh, I'm coaching defensive line and the linebackers. And practice is over. I go back to my truck. I get my phone, and I'll drop his name, Rob Benino. who was my boss at the time, PC officer. Uh, I had a missed call from him. Rob never called me after work, so I call him back, and he says, "Hey, what's the procedure for uh, if an aircraft, doesn't show up?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" Well, say we got an aircraft that doesn't end up where it's supposed to be. You know what we're supposed to do about all of that, right? And I'm like, "But tell me what you're saying." And he's like, "We had a flight of three, and one of the aircraft hasn't been heard from." And I was like, "Okay, so we have to sequester the records for the aircraft, uh, blah blah blah." This is a whole sequence of events, but yeah, we're tracking, we're compliant. So I go home and get the sun, get time to get a shower, time to get ate, time to get your homework done. Let's get ready to get in the bed. I go down to the basement and I call Rob and I said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to have a toddy. I'm getting ready to have myself a nightcap because been going at it since early in the morning, and here it is about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I want to get myself a little Jack on the rocks and then go off to nighty night." And he said, "Hey, we're at work. Don't worry about it. Don't need you, Sergeant." Called the guy's name, came in, and we got the records pulled. They've been sequestered, and we're going to be sending people out for recovery. And I'm like, "What?" So then I get another phone call that says, "Hey, I'm on my way to Alabama. Uh, we had an aircraft that crashed and it killed three of our guys. We lost a bird and we lost uh, a captain, a W-3, and an E-5. Lost a flight crew over not too far from where I live right now. You know what I mean?" And so things like that happen, and that's not the
In
only crash.
Alabama?
Yeah, the crash occurred in Alabama. Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were kind of talking about the same story about in the Philippines, but no. So this was something you were at home in Alabama, and
No,
somebody
this
just
was
called you.
no, 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 no. I was in the army at Fort Campbell. This was September 11th of '07.
Hmm.
This is a separate crash.
Wow.
That's what I was telling you. It's complicated and complex because when these things occur, there's still survivors that are out there. So you don't want to ever get too much into the detail of the story because I don't know what everybody else has heard or what they know. So I could tell you stories that I know what people know. That's a lot different. You know what I mean? But also, I'm very cognizant of the fact that these guys left families behind. Their children are now adults, if you think about it. And so here it is where this guy might have kids that don't know me from a can of paint, but yet I'm talking about the day his dad died. You get it? So I definitely try to be sensitive to those issues.
No, I definitely I can understand that for sure. Yeah, I
So
mean,
when you ask me questions, it's not that I'm cowering away uh, from anything. It's just that the first thing that goes into my mind is like those that are still here: mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, kids. Right?
no, I mean I get it for sure, 100%. I mean, just trying to get you to tell me some stories and things like that. Kind of share your
Well,
experience, and I get
and
it that you don't want to talk
well,
about some of those things.
and the biggest thing is too, man. While I was in the army having fun, the biggest things that I ever took away is that I was a night stalker, and we've got a creed, and in that creed it even says that secrecy is a way of life. For my only true ally is the night and the element of surprise. You know what I mean? So I'm from that era before we put everything on social media. I'm from that very cryptic era, and the guys that we're going to be talking to, they grew up in that same era as I did. Not too many of them were just from that social media flashbang where you put everything on Facebook. A lot of the people that we're going to be talking to in these interviews even are guys that are pre that, and so we're going to be tearing down walls, man. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I have barricades as well. That's why I want you to ask those questions. I'm just trying to justify the reason why I might be a little skeptical with answering.
I say if you want to bust those walls down, you got to start sometime, and this is what part two's about, Big Al.
Well, yeah, but I got a therapist as well, and her name isn't Brian Britt. That was a joke. Was that funny? That wasn't funny, was it?
I mean, it's not really that. It actually is pretty funny, just considering knowing me. I'm not the picture of mental health my damn self.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of why we.
But I mean,
That's what
I
we're
just
gonna do.
still feel like, why are we here? We gotta get into the nitty gritty, man. I mean, you given us some good shit, but we gotta get further into it.
Okay. What do you want to know?
I mean, I asked you before. You earned those bronze stars. How'd you earn them? You said it was on the back of the guys that were running underneath you. I mean, is that really what happened? Like, tell us a little about some of them stories of how those guys did earn you that bronze stars, possibly.
Okay. Let's say the we were in Iraq. This would have been, I believe, 5 to 6. I believe, yeah,
2005, 2006,
I believe it was 2005, 2006, and we were in Balad, and
Balad, Afghanistan,
Balad.
or
This is Iraq,
Iraq? Okay.
and IEDs at the time they were a big problem, and I was a senior aviation officer, NCO at the time, and we had our battalion task force had a total of 38 Black Ops. We had 30 from the unit itself, 3 companies, 10 aggregate per company, plus 8 assigned to us from the Kentucky National Guard. And our mission was we had it over the country of Iraq. Our expert leaders came up with like the 5 Olympic rings. And so if you put these rings over Iraq, each one of those was a ring route for a helicopter, and they overlap. So you can move from one end of the country to the other without having to get in a car, especially for moving personnel, without having to get in a vehicle and get on the road and risk being blown up by IEDs. And so, I mean, my guys busted their ass every night. We worked every night, and I think we broke a lot of aviation records, and we never dropped a mission. So we made sure that we had enough ready aircraft for the next morning to meet all of those ring route missions, and that was a pretty big deal. I mean, we flew in excess of 25,000 hours during our time period in Iraq.
Wow. And even though IEDs were the main concern, I mean, RPGs probably had to be a concern too. I mean, because wouldn't they try to shoot down these aircrafts, or was those ring routes safe?
No, nothing was safe, especially during that time period. There were numerous aircraft that did actually get shot down by the enemy. So we were working, employing the best countermeasures that you could imagine, and a lot of those modifications had to be done at night because that was the time where generally the aircraft weren't flying. So we did the majority of the maintenance in it during night, like Santa's little elves. And when the guys come in the morning, poof, there you go. Your aircraft are good to go, and go out there and make history.
Now, what stopped y'all from flying at night?
It's just not a lot of missions going on at night. Just the need to move personnel and everything that was going on at that particular time in the Army was more driven towards daylight operations. So, you
Seems
know,
like it would have been safer though at night, even though the visibility, of course, would be lower. But I mean, you wouldn't have to worry as much about being shot down, right?
Yeah, one would think. I mean, we still had aircraft that were flying at night, and those were the aircraft that usually would come back shot up. So,
Really?
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
So they
yeah,
were more active at night then.
yeah. People were more bold at night when they can't be seen than they would be during the daytime.
Oh, well, that's definitely interesting. I mean, makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
Well, yeah, during the daytime, you think about it. If you're bold enough to sit out there and shoot at us during the daytime, and we can see you like that, where you're probably not going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. I mean, that's the man. Anyway, we won't talk, but yeah, that's the reality of it.
But
But yeah, we
did
had a
you
lot
ever
of
see, like, I know IEDs took out a lot of people. Like, what was some of the Army's tactics, if you don't mind, to kind of circumvent that and be able to get by that challenge?
definitely putting people in the air. That was the biggest. If it didn't need to be moved on the ground, then don't move it on the ground. If it does need to be moved on the ground, everything that's moving it needs to be up armored. And at that point, we were in the process of getting better armored capable vehicles in the theater because when we went over in 0203, uh, there wasn't anything that was up armored. I mean, best we had were turtleback Humvees. They were just hardback Humvees, but they weren't really ballistic. So it got to the point where the only thing moving off base had to be up armored, MRAPs, mules, things like that. But my career was aviation, so everything we were doing was in the air anyway.
For sure.
And
But I mean, I'm sure you did have to travel, on land plenty of times, and had to have that risk.
yeah, absolutely. I traveled all over Iraq. Did not get the pleasure of traveling on land in Afghanistan. Everything I did in Afghanistan was in the air. uh, but literally went from Kuwait all the way up to Mosul and back in Iraq. So I pretty much covered all of the providences in that great place. The first time, second time didn't hit the roads once. Everything we did was via air.
Now, of course, this was after Saddam Hussein had died, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was in country when Saddam got killed. Um, but yeah,
Now, did you didn't actually serve before he was actually there? Because I mean, I know you said I think 9/11 had a big part in why you joined too, right?
no, not me, brother. I joined in 1990.
Okay, so
Yeah, out of
wow,
hospital.
that is a long time.
Oh yeah, who you telling?
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, so I was just curious. Like you guys weren't in Iraq. Were you in Iraq before Saddam died?
Yes.
So I mean, I was just curious what the difference was having to. It kind of was the adversary different a little bit, or what was the differences?
I mean, I I guess the easiest way to say this is the people that were for Saddam were fighting against us, and the people that were not for Saddam were fighting against us, and we just tried to make the best of it.
So everybody was fighting against you. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Whether they were Shia or Sunni, I mean, they weren't American. Does that make sense?
But then again, we've heard stories too about some of them being somewhat sympathetic. So I mean, they're
Come on. I mean, I heard Daryl tell that story and I got it, but the reality of it is this, man. You're driving through the desert and it's 100 and I mean, I'll say it's 100 and fuck. I don't even know how else to say it, but uh, and I remember this little girl standing there, and you tell the soldiers don't feed the dang kids no matter what. And this little girl, I remember passing this little girl. I mean, she's standing there. There's nothing around her as far as you can see, far as the eyes can see. You know what I mean? Nothing. Just this little girl standing out there on the asphalt. That's 100. I mean, she's barefooted. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's gotta. I mean, heck, I hate to walk barefoot in the sand at the beach. You know, like in Myrtle Beach.
And
That's gotta be
and this,
hot in
and this was
Iraq.
yeah, and this was early on, but somebody ended up throwing that little girl something, and
Like a grenade.
no, like some food or a packet of food or
Oh,
something.
okay.
And when you look back, there's like 10 kids around that little girl now. You know what I mean? Do you understand?
Oh yeah, but of course, if they're hungry, of course they're gonna be wanting to
Yeah, so
be
that's
fed.
why they send the little girls out there. That's why they send the little girl out there. She'll never get what you give her. That's why you don't feed them. You don't give them anything, and then
That's
that's
kind of
hard.
sad though when you think about it, dude. Because what if they're really hungry? Everybody should be fed, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you're right. So you feed that little girl, and they're gonna bust her head open, and then she'll never get what you gave her anyway. I mean,
That's
do you
just
understand what I'm saying?
savage. Sounds like to me. I mean, just so you're saying that whenever you feed her, all these people are gonna come and hurt her to get that food from her. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Our logic doesn't work in their reality. I mean, we found those people there. They were there when we got there. So there's nothing, it's not like we're even trying to change these people. We're just interacting with these people.
Well, what about all the you know trying to install democracy there?
That was the second trip. The first trip was way more savage than that. I mean, it was,
Introducing to a new culture for the first time, 'cause, yeah, for a lot
it
of
was,
yeah.
it was brutal. I mean, we were burning poop for over half of it. I remember,
That's interesting though, because the second time it was a little bit more trying to help them out, but like so the first time wasn't really about that really. It was kind of
well,
like just to survive and get out there and take care, get rid of this tyranny, I guess.
well, it was it was Saddam Hussein's reign. That was the first one, but
Weapons of mass destruction, the whole George Bush
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, we didn't. Afghanistan was where we were bringing in a new government.
Okay.
The elections, we had the elections in Afghanistan, and that was,
See, I think a lot of
uh,
civilians, those wars run together, wouldn't you say?
well, yeah,
Like, I mean, a
it,
lot of people don't understand what, especially the younger crowd. I mean, like me, I'm only 31, and I know that I feel old, but I know that really that's not that old. Of course, you've lived a lot longer than me. Hey, you joined the military. You said 1990, dude.
yeah, 10 years out of
I was born in 91. So I mean, you get what I'm saying? It's like it doesn't register for a lot of us that those were two separate things, like the Gulf War and the battle in Afghanistan, the war war on terror are the same
two
for us in a
totally
lot of
different,
ways.
nope, two totally different events.
Yeah,
And 9/11, it changed the way our country operated, even to this day. And we had a lot of uh, there was a lot of patriotism that came from the attacks on our country at 9/11. I remember, seeing the amount of American flags, and up to that point, when I came in the army, I mean, we couldn't. If I was going home, I couldn't be in uniform, and that wasn't. You ask me why.
well, I would assume. I mean, probably because people just loved you to death.
You know what I mean? And think about that. You're being sarcastic, but if the difference between September 12th, 2001 and September 12th of 1991 was I couldn't wear my uniform on my way home. And I don't mean like from work. I'm talking about like I could get off work and drive to North Carolina in my uniform. You know what I mean? After 9/11. Before that I couldn't, and it was for my safety.
Really?
Yeah,
So you're saying that so
welcome
before
to America.
9/11, people wanted to hurt you?
Welcome to America. Yeah, absolutely. There was no love for military prior to 9/11. That's a true story. I mean, you remember when the Vietnam veterans came back, like Tammy said, that you know, they haven't been welcomed home. Well, until that, we still kind of fell into the same soup bowl as they did. Nobody really needed the military until we got punched in the mouth, and then all of a sudden, hey, where the military guys at? We're like, yeah, we're right here. Let's go get them. I mean, and that was the mentality. Let's go get them. You want to play? Let's go. And we took it to them full court press.
Yeah, you definitely did. I mean,
Oh yeah, way more than you could ever imagine, and way more than ever be said. But it shaped a whole breed class of warriors that this country had never seen. And when those guys got back, not all of those people did 20 years and got out a lot. The vast majority of these warriors only did 5, 6, 7 years, but yet half of that was in combat. And now they're coming back and they don't have that 20 years of military experience and understanding how to navigate through the system to help them navigate through the VA or whatever. So a lot of them are just out there lost. And so
hmm
now I'm saying was, oh shit, they need a first sergeant. I mean, that's what they need. Hey, fall in. And then if you're a damn retired first sergeant, then do what you can where you're at, and we'll do the majority of it online. But we got to do something. We just can't sit back now and just let this thing keep going because I suffer from as many inks as my soldiers, or probably more. I guarantee you more. I mean, it's and I lived with it. I kept it buried. I internalized it. And what really jacked me up is when I got cancer because then I couldn't internalize everything. I had something had to seep out to keep me from exploding.
now that's one thing that we really haven't covered at all, and I think that great
I think that's
transition
gonna be
to that.
part three. I think that's gonna be a great part three.
I guess it sounds like we have reached a conclusion here, but man, I mean, we definitely had some good conversations here tonight, and can't wait to get part three started because I mean, I know that that's another inspirational thing that you've kind of dealt with and are still in the battle, presently.
Yeah, yeah. It's a journey. That's what I call it.
Well, we definitely appreciate you, Big Al, and definitely some great conversations. Can't wait to get back at it. Of course, we're going to talk to you a lot more, just considering you're an integral part in this. But thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you next time, of course. And we appreciate everybody out there tuning in. Fall in.